Crush your enemies.
They drew first blood, not me.
See them driven before you.
Oh, my user.
And hear the lamentation of the women.
But I pity the fool.
Glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate.
Phone home.
They're here.
Oh, real light sleeper, child.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're rewatching the 80s so you don't have to. We'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in chronological order, overanalyzing what you've seen and spoiling what you haven't. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jess Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today we're discussing Final Assignment, released March 1st, 1982. It was written by Marc Rosen and Gail Thomson, directed by Paul Almond, and released by Almy Pictures. Jessica Biel was born 2 days later.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Jessica Biel. The film began production with Georgie Girl Helmer, Silvio Nerezano in the director's chair, but after a week of shooting, he was dropped by producers and replaced with Paul Almond, ex-husband of star Geneviève Bujold, who was probably attached as a favor out of convenience. Almond spent the entire production schedule rewriting the script, which caused problems in post where various story points seemed to contradict each other.
You can't tell.
No, not at all. The project went through several working titles, Iron Curtain and Moscow Chronicles, on the way to Final Assignment. The Russia scenes were shot in Canada. Replicas of Lenin's tomb and Red Square were built in a lot by the St. Lawrence Seaway in Montreal.
That feels like a waste of money.
For sure, yeah.
Just don't have a scene at Lenin's tomb.
Yeah. I mean, you have to do something.
Yeah,
there has to be something worth the price of admission.
I guess.
This wasn't it.
No. Final Assignment was nominated for 4 Genies for Film Editing, Sound Editing, Original Screenplay, and Lead Actress for Bujold, but it didn't take anything home, and it shouldn't have.
Those are those silly Canadian Oscars.
Right, exactly. And this week's dumbest IMDb trivia point reads as follows. The name of the intelligence agency was the KGB. Thanks.
Good job, IMDb.
Thanks for basic listening skills. We hear a sonar-esque beeping over black throughout the opening credits. We start picture in a dark screening room on the face of Michael York as Sergei Petrov, or Lyosha Petrov to his friends, and the camera floats around the room to introduce a bunch of Russian government officials, including Secretary General Buchinsky. They're reviewing footage from a recent broadcast by reporter Nicole Thompson, played by Geneviève Bujold. She has requested an interview with Buchinsky, and they are vetting her work. She's a wartime correspondent and interviews people in the middle of gunfights. She speaks with higher-ups in the guerrilla armies fighting against Russia. Presumably, these are Mujahideen fighters who were funded by America in the late 70s and early 80s. Now, we cut to a shot of the Toronto skyline from a distance, and then inside a studio where Nicole is getting her makeup done for another broadcast. A coworker tells her that her controversial reporting could get her in a lot of trouble with the station.
If you keep breaking rules, excuse me, like this, someday somebody is going to get mad at you and break your goddamn neck.
She reveals to her coworker that not only is she not risking her career, but she's been granted an interview with Buchinsky.
Got an exclusive interview with Buchinsky? You got it?
That's right. And you know what? I'm going.
Okay, Thompson, you won.
Come on, Sam, don't be mad.
When the cameras are rolling in the studio, Nicole announces her upcoming interview with Buchinsky, the Secretary General of the Communist Party in Russia. Then she transitions to a piece about a Canadian businessman who has made a living importing goods to Russia. She doesn't mention his name yet, but the photograph behind her is of Burgess Meredith. We cut from the news desk to her in-person interview with the Canadian businessman, credited as Zach, but it sounds like she calls him Zachman, in one of his warehouses. He explains he got into the business because his foster parents were fur traders. Following in the family business, he has focused his work in war-torn regions and shares a metaphor about hurricanes. The eye of a hurricane is a quiet place, and it's the only place he feels comfortable and where he does his best business. We cut right to Nicole's plane landing in Moscow. As she rushes through the halls of a large government building, possibly the Kremlin, she finds herself running alongside Michael York's Petrov character.
Wait.
You too?
Oh, always.
Just as they enter the central chamber of the building, Sergei Petrov is introduced to speak as the chief liaison officer for the State Commission of Radio and Television. Michael York stands to address the crowd. He welcomes them to Moscow and informs them that the Kremlin is nearly 1,000 years old today.
And for almost 1,000 years, it's been overcrowded.
I really can't get over Michael York speaking in a Russian accent.
Yeah,
it drives me
odd.
crazy throughout the whole movie. Like, I was waiting for him to be like some sort of
spy.
agent and he wasn't actually, Russian, and they were going to reveal that he'd spoken a normal English accent after. No, never.
Never does.
They should have just hired a Russian. It's very off-putting.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they did this. He makes some surprisingly anti-Russian infrastructure jokes by pointing out that technology has allowed them to construct buildings in 2 months that used to take 2 years, and then admitting that it takes the full 2 years before they have heating and plumbing. The audience here are all foreign press, and an Israeli reporter asks about the controversial Jarov trial, which is off-limits to all press, foreign and domestic. Petrov admits that while the press is being invited into Russia, they do not have the freedoms of their homeland, and whatever they write will be screened and censored by the Russian government. I mean, presumably, unless they bring it home before they present it. I feel like it would be pretty easy to just write this thing when you get back.
Well, I imagine what they want is the footage.
Yeah. I also think it's funny that he says, if you want to protest the lack of press rights in this country, then you can get in line behind our own press because they're just as upset. And it's like, I can't get in line behind them because they're not allowed to publicly protest either, for sure. The next day, we see people lined up in Red Square, marching slowly past the building for a glance at Lenin's tomb. The camera crew recording Nicole's report are interrupted by a man off the street who claims to be a friend of Jarov, the dissident leader at the heart of the secretive government trial. The man tries desperately to convey his political wishes, the right to worship and practice Judaism in Israel, but he's being held captive in Russia. He tries to hand off a list of other dissidents when he is quickly collected by a guard who says she cannot speak with the man. Nicole argues with the guard and other assorted security team members until they throw her and her camera crew into a government car to be driven away. Sometime later, Petrov arrives at a Moscow jail to collect her.
Yeah, she tells them to keep recording. It's like,
why? They're going to take all of it.
You're just going to take it.
He warned her in advance not to expect her full American freedoms here, but she has ignored his warning.
I think I explained to you this morning about the need for proper authorization.
Oh, but I had authorization.
Oh, yes, to film Lenin's mausoleum. Not to engage in interviews with subversive elements who present a somewhat distorted view of our society.
She claims to have no idea he was a subversive, and Petrov says he can convince the police she didn't know that either. She demands her tape from the report they had recorded, and Petrov reminds her that she won't get everything back. He also suggests she might lose her interview with Buchinsky, and Petrov might lose his job for even recommending her for the interview. They head straight from jail to a reception. The Canadian Prime Minister is here to meet with Buchinsky.
That seems like the bigger story.
Yeah.
What is her story?
Her story is about this trial that's going on that the government is being very secretive about.
I thought she was here to interview Buchinsky.
Yeah. So that's not what she came here to interview about. Because she's
using that as a reason to get here and to get access to things.
Okay.
Right. So she wants to report on that, but they've given her this exclusive interview about just life in Russia, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you really recommend me for this interview? Thank you.
Oh, we all make mistakes.
Mr. Bowen, an expat radio correspondent associate of Nicole's, finds her at the reception to say hi and asks how things went in Red Square today. All he heard was a Canadian journalist was arrested, and he assumed correctly that it was her. He also warns her that Petrov is a famous ladies' man and to keep her eyes peeled. She asks her friend about a woman she recognizes, and he tells her this is Dr. Ulanova, a Nobel Prize-winning scientist.
She's head of the Novotny Institute.
Biochemist. I'd like to meet her.
Good luck.
Nicole makes her way through the crowd to Colleen Dewhurst playing Dr. Ulanova. Nicole asks for permission to interview her at the Novotny Institute, but Ulanova is reluctant to commit to anything. It's clear she feels pressured by her government to refuse an interview. Nicole escapes the reception into the rainy night and gets a ride home with her expat friend and an associate. They try to connect her with a dissident to speak with for another unapproved interview opportunity. When she gets back to her hotel that night, Nicole finds Petrov waiting for her in the lobby. When she explains where she's been, he reminds her that she is required to secure permission for all interviews during her visit in Mother Russia. She says the interview didn't even happen because the dissident flashed his headlights as a signal but then drove away when a truck passed between them. She has determined that the truck that blocked their path was KGB, and Petrov laughs off the accusation.
Of course. And then they put him in cement and threw him in the river? Come on, Nicole. If the KGB wanted to arrest this man, they would simply have arrested him.
Maybe they did. I don't know.
Sure
We never talked to him. He tells her he's taking her out of Moscow Tuesday to keep her from getting in any more trouble. The next day, we see a tour group being led through the Novotny Institute by Dr. Ulanova. Nicole lags behind the tour, trying to get special footage and interviews from scientists in the building. Nicole locks eyes with Dr. Ulanova through a window and makes clear her intention to conduct the unapproved interview. Ulanova looks down at a bouquet of white flowers, hoping to convey some kind of covert message. That night, we see Nicole reporting outside a courthouse in Moscow. Inside, the political dissident named Abram Jarov is being held prisoner. No one is being granted attendance to the man's trial, and so they wait out here for any word of the proceedings. In the middle of her report, Jarov's mother is walked through the front doors, shocking the crowd, and Nicole tries to interview her as she is escorted away. The next day, Petrov is quick to lecture Nicole on yet another unapproved interview attempt. This time, they're meeting at a radio station, and Nicole's expat friend Bowen is about to read the news on air. Talk of the reception with the General Secretary and Prime Minister is broadcast uneventfully, but when the conversation turns to the 30-year sentence handed down to dissident Jarov, Petrov snaps his fingers to indicate this section will be censored from the broadcast. Petrov tells Mr. Bowen in the booth that they're having technical difficulties to cover for blocking the broadcast. Nicole joins Bowen in the booth, and when Petrov turns the mics back up, he catches the tail end of an argument between them. Bowen is mad that Nicole is sneaking anti-Russian news into his broadcasts, because if their reports are blocked by the government, then every other media outlet will have an advantage over them here, and they could lose their jobs over it. We cut to a picnic out in the country between Petrov and Nicole. As they eat, they're being watched by a mother-daughter team who prepared the meal, and the mother has to keep dragging her daughter away from gawking at the supposedly handsome man. Nicole asks Petrov why he censored Bowen's broadcast, and he lies that the man went off script, implying that if he had presented his full script to them, that there would be no problem. But when she follows up, he admits to being a hypocrite.
Why did he assume that his truth would not be accepted if he submitted it beforehand?
Would it have been accepted?
No.
Petrov leans back on the whole just following orders excuse and points out that in his single-party country, there is nowhere else for him to turn without leaving Russia altogether.
It's not my fault if you live in a police state.
To ease the tension, she suggests starting their relationship over again. The music tries its best to convince us that these two are actually in some kind of relationship together, but there's never any believable romance here, so it always just feels awkward.
Yeah, I kept thinking that one or the other was trying to play the other one,
right,
because there really isn't any romance here.
Yeah.
But then that never comes to fruition. There's nobody's backstabbing anybody here.
Because there's no advantage of her going out to the country, presumably for days.
Yeah.
Taking her away from what would be her job of getting news footage.
After lunch, the two walk down to a rushing river and cross a small wooden bridge over the rapids.
So they have them go down to this river for this wonderful scene of them by the river, but they decide to record audio live on location and not ADR anything.
We can barely hear them at all.
All I hear is the constant static noise of the river.
It doesn't help that we're watching this in like VHS quality too.
Yeah.
Petrov stops halfway across the bridge and demands the toll of a kiss to finish crossing. She pays him his kiss, and then Petrov falls backward off the bridge. We see a real human go through some nasty whitewater, and Nicole dives in to drag him out of it.
When she runs down the river to try to follow him down the river, a freaking giant dog is there.
Yeah.
I was like, is that a wolf?
What is happening?
Because I assume it's his dog from the home, but you never see it follow them to the river. Just as soon as she starts running, it comes running out of the woods at her. I was like, oh my God.
That's funny. When he first stopped her for the kiss, I assumed he was about to throw her into the water. We cut back to the house from the picnic, and Petrov is recovering in bed. Again, the mother who prepared their meal has to keep rushing her daughter out of the room because she's interested in Petrov, especially shirtless as he is now. Nicole joins him in the room, and they are given privacy together. Nicole joins him in the bed, and we cut to a car dropping her off back at her hotel later. She sees a rack of flowers for sale across the street, including a bouquet that resembles the flowers from the Novotny Institute yesterday. A secret agent-looking character buys a bouquet while eyeing Nicole suspiciously.
So has this person been here all day, just
I don't
buying
know.
flowers?
I don't know what is happening here or how any of this information was supposed to be conveyed to her, but we're going to dig into it a little bit more here.
Yeah, because I saw Ulanova like touch the flowers, but I had no idea that was some kind of
Was she even there?
signal.
I didn't even see her in this shot.
No, previously.
Previously at the hospital. Yeah. And I realized this is the same flowers.
And that was enough for her to understand that this was a message from that other woman, not just those are common flowers here in Russia.
Yeah, exactly.
The woman selling the flowers smiles at Nicole, and then a second older woman walks past her, and somehow Nicole knows to follow the second woman all the way through town for like hours. She's led to a nearby park crowded with children. It reminds me of the park from Trog, but it's not the park from Trog. This is all Canada. Sitting at one of the benches around the park is Dr. Ulanova. The flowers were assigned to lead her here. Ulanova asks to conduct the interview while walking to avoid government attention.
So you're already in trouble now.
Yeah.
Because she's been arrested at least twice.
Yeah.
And so people have to know, one, who she is. And if she's talking to this doctor, they have to know, oh, that's the reporter, the American reporter.
She wouldn't be in any less trouble for sitting on the bench next to her than she would be for walking in circles in this park with her.
Yeah. And she for sure at this point has to have a shadow of the KGB following her. And I'm certain Ulanova does.
Right.
So none of this should have worked out.
She introduces her granddaughter, Tasha, who says hi and then leaves with the older woman who led Nicole here. Dr. Ulanova stresses the importance of trust between them if she is to agree to this private conversation. Ulanova is being forced to conduct dangerous experiments at the Novotny Institute. She thinks that if she could get word to the West what is happening, that scientists from the US and Canada might intervene. It would require Nicole delivering this information herself, which is legally espionage, and also legally stupid, because scientists from America and Canada can't just waltz into Russia and say, you cut it out. How dare you do that stuff? Russia will be like, fuck off.
Yeah. I mean,
get in this car.
They don't hide what they're doing.
Yeah.
This they're hiding. I understand that.
I don't know why.
But like there's plenty of things they do that are not allowed other places.
Very weird. That night we see Petrov giving Nicole a tour of his apartment. They go on his balcony, which has a nice view of Moscow. Apparently Petrov is married, but his wife lives in Ukraine and they are separated.
Did you love her?
In the beginning, I tried, but we were just too far apart.
Because she moved to Ukraine. Petrov and Nicole spend the night on the floor doing vodka shots. Petrov asks about her work, and she says it's her whole life and that she doesn't have friends outside of it.
Didn't he saw her work and put this in and said, hey, let this person interview you.
He picked her for this assignment.
So doesn't he know all about her work?
He should. I think he's talking more about work-life balance, though.
That's definitely
it was a big thing in the early 80s.
Russia.
Yeah. Russia in the early 80s cared a lot about women and their work-life balance. The next day, Nicole goes to meet with Dr. Ulanova at her home. While Ulanova prepares a table for them to chat around, Nicole finds a framed photo of Ulanova's son and daughter-in-law.
Your son? Oh, yes. Mikhail and his wife, Anna. They were killed in a train accident a year ago.
And I was like, was it a train accident? Like, was this not a bombing or an intentional government action? Which explains why she is now the caretaker of Tasha, her granddaughter. Dr. Ulanova calls Tasha in now to carry a cup of tea 1 foot from her own hand to Nicole's, and when Tasha leaves the room, Ulanova mentions the girl has a brain tumor that cannot be treated in Russia.
There is a surgeon in Los Angeles who has perfected that operation.
Well, can't you take her there?
No, because they revoked our visas 2 days ago.
Why didn't you go a week ago? Why didn't you go when you found out about it? That's when I would have gone, personally. Dr. Ulanova asks Nicole's knowledge of steroids. She says they're testing it on children. They're documenting these tests with a single tape, which Dr. Ulanova can provide to Nicole.
If I take it, I will be guilty of treason against the state, and you, as you said yesterday, will be guilty of espionage.
Nicole agrees to take the tape back to the West with her when she leaves tomorrow night. Nicole asks what will happen to Ulanova's granddaughter, and she admits that while she faces trial, her granddaughter will likely be handed over to the Russian government for placement. Nicole is shaken by the woman's resignation to this fate. We cut back to the same park, still crowded with children, and Nicole is just playing on a swing set amongst them to, think about things, I guess. Nicole sends a note attached to flowers back to Dr. Ulanova, who's now playing chess with her granddaughter Tasha.
I am looking forward to seeing Tasha at Lenin's tomb tomorrow at 10. Nicole.
Very subtle.
Yeah. If anyone were to
Nobody
intercept
would be
this,
able to decode
we would be
this.
fine. Somehow, Ulanova has gathered that this is Nicole agreeing to take the tape and the child back with her to the West. In her temporary offices here, Nicole is pulling the foam out of the equipment cases to see where she might be able to store the child to smuggle her back to America without alerting the Russian authorities.
Because they won't X-ray or open any.
I don't think they would X-ray this stuff. They would just assume it's camera equipment, but
is that realistic, considering that they're trying to make sure, like, this woman has been seen talking to...
Well, we don't know for sure that she's been seen talking to Ulanova yet. As far as we know, she's made a few unauthorized interview attempts. That's all we know. That's all we know that the KGB knows. They might know more by now, but all we know confirmed is that. Her cameraman is having a weirdly hard time deciding what's more important to get out of the country. This dying child or his stupid camera.
Leave it behind. The network will kill me.
Oh, please forget the network. It's my responsibility. Don't you worry about it, okay? Don't worry about it.
That night, Dr. Ulanova moves through the darkened Novotny laboratory in search of the tape documenting all their childhood steroid research.
Also, you're making him an accomplice to espionage?
It's like get out of the room then.
It's like you've just involved him, so if they open the camera case, who's the first person they're going to look at is the camera guy.
With the help of the laboratory's night security, she is let into the safe and signs a ledger to confirm she accessed these materials at night. She slips a reel of tape out of the safe and into her shirt to smuggle home. We cut inside Nicole's hotel room as she gets home for the night and finds Petrov waiting for her again, this time asleep in her bed. When she wakes him, he surprises her with an unexpected trip to Leningrad tomorrow. She pretends to be pleased, even though it throws a wrench into her espionage plans.
She does a really shitty job of pretending to be pleased.
She's like, well, we're leaving tomorrow.
As she
and he's
paces across the room and puts her hands through her hair. It's like, no, I'm really excited. Thank you. You're like, what?
This is so great.
Oh, awesome. The next morning, outside Lenin's tomb, Nicole and Ulanova meet as planned. Nicole informs her of the last-minute adjustment, and Ulanova is obviously upset, but Nicole suggests handing off Tasha in Leningrad instead. Ulanova is on a ticking clock now that she's stolen evidence from the safe.
Dangerous. Yes. I can take Tasha there.
Nicole is driven with Petrov to a palatial estate off the beaten path, and before she's even set foot inside, Petrov is ordered inside for a chat with Buchinsky. He begins the chat by sharing photographs of Nicole and Ulanova's secret meetings. Buchinsky wants a détente with the Canadians, and obviously the Prime Minister agrees, but the Politburo want Buchinsky removed for even suggesting it. They want the KGB to kill Nicole for this espionage, specifically to cause an international incident and allow for Buchinsky's removal. Back outside, Petrov assures Nicole the interview is still good to go, but he admits that she will spend her time in Leningrad with a guide and not him. We cut right to Nicole being quickly annoyed with her state-appointed babysitter. He follows her into a public auction, and she takes a seat beside Zach, the Canadian businessman from her earlier report. She brazenly reveals the entire plot to the man. A kid needs smuggling out of the country, and she needs Zach to do it. After reiterating how dangerous and stupid her plan is, he agrees to risk his entire decades-long career to help her because he cares. He has a private room upstairs in this building where they can pack the child into a load of his merchandise without being interrupted when the time comes. Together, they conspire to lose Nicole's government tail, and Nicole finds Dr. Ulanova in a nearby coffee shop. When word gets back to the KGB what's going on, Petrov is given a stern warning in Russian for his incompetent escorting of the Canadian reporter. We cut from there to soldiers breaking into Dr. Ulanova's apartment, but the only person home is the woman who was watching Tasha, and she doesn't respond to their questions. When Nicole finds Petrov in her hotel room again, he chews her out for ditching her guide. He tells her that the KGB are going to cancel her interview with Buchinsky, and Petrov refuses to change their mind unless she admits where she's been. She tells him about her conversations with Dr. Ulanova, and he fills in the blanks with what he already knows.
And that's why she gave you a classified tape, which she stole from her institute last night.
You know, then!
The KGB just told me! Have you any idea what you're getting yourself involved in?
Like at the picnic before, Petrov disingenuously asks why she didn't come to him sooner for help.
Look, you could have come to me. I have friends, influence. I could have helped you.
Would you?
What?
Would you? Could you have helped?
No, not if it involved breaking the law.
Why does he even ask these questions? What an insanely poorly written character.
Why didn't you ask me to help you break the law? Would you?
No,
I would never break the law.
Why did you assume we'd censor your broadcast? Would you? Yeah! Why didn't you ask for help? Would you help? Fuck no! She claims that Ulanova kept the reel because Nicole had to turn the woman down because of this last-minute switch to Leningrad. She even throws Zach under the bus by mentioning her fur trader friend that Petrov might not have known about yet. Petrov promises to secure the interview, but the KGB will be watching her every move for the rest of her visit. Before the interview is to take place, Petrov abandons Nicole again. She reminds him she will not see him again before she leaves, and he invites her to stay here with him for keeps, but she cannot accept. Later, Petrov listens in live during her interview with Buchinsky. I can't believe this actually happened either, the way they set it up. She's a spy, she's a spy, she's a spy, we should kill her. Now, let's send her in there and interview the leader of the Communist Party. While they speak, we see Zach walking around in the fur market. Buchinsky's translators look uncomfortable when Nicole broaches the subject of steroid research. She makes indirect accusations of Russian experiments with steroids on children, and after a pregnant pause, Buchinsky breaks into laughter and speaks in his best English, presumably to keep his own non-English speaking people in the dark, but also as a more personal gesture to Nicole.
You are like my daughter. She also asks me hard questions.
Petrov chuckles in the shadows, relieved his girlfriend wasn't just beheaded for her insolence.
Yet.
Yeah, that happens off camera, guy.
I was going to say, they're still filming.
Back in the fur warehouse, we see Zach packing up a load of furs. In a neighboring bar, he flashes an extra wad of $100 bills to a man who hands over a ring of keys. Outside, we see a tractor towing hay bales out of a field and blocking the road. When Nicole's driver stops to yell at them, the man is bagged up and carried away by farmers, leaving Nicole behind in his empty car for Dr. Ulanova to rush Tasha into the back seat of. Who are these people? When did they coordinate farmers blocking the road? Because that's not what the money was for. That was Zach buying a truck for later. A squad of Russian soldiers wait in the woods off the road with another car, and when they spot the stolen car speed by, they just let it go. Maybe they're following it at a distance, but it doesn't kick off a chase. It's just, we just saw them steal a car,
right?
And then it just drove past us. I'm not clear why they were even outside of their car in the first place. Just so we could identify them as Russians who were not in their car. Dr. Ulanova says heartfelt goodbyes to the granddaughter she seems certain to never see again. When the car reaches its destination, Ulanova reminds Tasha to remember where she came from.
And remember, you are always Russian.
Oh, that's not cool. I kind of wish I wasn't. We cut back to Petrov, who is looking for Nicole where she was supposed to be driven, but she's not there. He wanders around the auction floor, perplexed for a while, and then the carload of soldiers pull up out front. Upstairs, Zach and Nicole have stacked a rolling cart, and as the freight elevator opens to take them downstairs, a pair of soldiers step out and pass them by, completely missing Nicole in the minimal costume of a babushka and glasses. But they have Tasha here tucked into the supplies. Downstairs, the elevator door opens, and Nicole spots Petrov in a crowd of soldiers. They stay put for another floor to unload their shipment in the basement, but Petrov catches a glimpse of them before the doors close completely. Petrov races around the building chasing down wrong women in babushkas until he's convinced himself he never saw her at all.
But the guys that he's with don't really seem to care at all that he just bolted out of there.
And he never explains to them what he's doing or what he thinks he saw.
Why would they not just follow him?
Yeah. In the basement, Zach is pulled aside for some purpose, and Nicole is left to transport the package alone. People give her instructions in Russian, and she feigns understanding. When Zach has been approved by the building's security, he returns to her, but in the time she has spent wandering around, she has lost the cart with Zach's furs and their kid contraband. After a moment of panic, they locate the cart and load it into their truck. Zach drives his van out of the dock, and as they clear the alley, they see more and more government vehicles dumping more and more soldiers at the curb. On a country road, Nicole unpacks the child to let her breathe for a moment. One guard who saw Nicole duck into the van on the way out informs a member of the manhunt. Petrov hops into a helicopter to seek out Zach's departing van. By nightfall, Zach is closing in on the border crossing, and the road is blocked with a traveling circus, which is taking its time getting through customs. Petrov is right on their heels, and as soon as she hears the chopper, Nicole is confident it's him. Seeing no better alternative, she plans to unpack Tasha and race on foot over the border, and Zach reluctantly agrees. Petrov tries to radio down to the border crossing what he sees from above, but they can barely hear him over his own vehicle. Nicole, Zach, and Tasha hop onto the circus truck as it pulls through the crossing. Inside, we see a full band playing a song together and sharing drinks with the Canadians to celebrate. The circus truck is still between the border crossings on Russian property when Petrov instructs his pilot to swoop down and stop the truck in the road. The truck slams to a halt, and they watch the chopper touch down in the road behind them. Why wouldn't they keep driving? It's behind you. Go, go! Petrov jumps out into the street and begins ordering them out of the truck immediately. At least he manages not to ask, "Why did you assume we wouldn't charter a flight to LA for you and the girl?" He demands Nicole hand over the tape from Dr. Ulanova. When she doesn't respond, he snatches Tasha away from her, and she tells him that the tape is tucked into the girl's toy doll. He doesn't check, but marches back to the chopper with the girl, and Zach books at full speed toward Petrov's back and yanks him sideways, forcing him to drop the girl and the doll.
Run, Tasha, run!
Petrov pulls out a gun to threaten him, and the men wrestle with the weapon for a moment until Petrov fires a round into Zach's chest and he collapses to the ground. Tasha makes it across the line to Finland, but Petrov walks to her and leads her back to the road. He lets Nicole leave with Tasha.
Take good care of her. And of yourself.
Doing his best impression of a human, he still keeps the girl's doll to ensure that Russian children will continue to be experimented on by his monstrous overlords. I really wanted them to get over the border and she'd be like, "I'm sorry about your doll. I didn't want him to know it was in your overalls," or something like that. Like, we still have the tape. Yeah, because it doesn't make any sense to give it back to him.
Yeah.
Or for him to accept it if we're supposed to sympathize with him remotely.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess of the two things he was charged with, getting the tape back was the highest priority.
If you're going to make me choose between getting shot in the face once and getting shot in the face twice, I feel like I let them take the tape.
Yeah.
I'm going to die either way. I let this girl escape. They didn't even try to make Petrov 1% relatable, so the movie fails. It's just cartoon Russians the whole time. Mutating children to death in pursuit of a super race and banning all unflattering press, which, I mean, the second part is basically true of Russia, but the first part, it's like, I don't think they're literally just torturing children for fun and shooting anyone who talks about it.
Well, and to Jesse's point, I kept thinking that there was going to be some kind of turn with Petrov, like that, like he was going to come around. Like
I think this was meant to be the turn.
Yeah, this is supposed to be him being a great
turn.
person. Yeah. But yeah, it's a thumbs down for me for sure.
Oh yeah, thumbs down.
Yeah, this was a terrible watch.
It's a bad MacGyver episode, but it's feature length.
Yeah, it was way too long. All these jaunts to the countryside, where nothing is happening.
We're just gonna watch them have a romantic picnic for a while, where they argue with each other, but they both hate each other the whole time, and one guy's a monster the whole time. And then she hops into bed with him. Like, what was that?
I don't know.
Is she literally falling for him, or is this part of her cover?
Well, yeah. So that's what needed to be established. It needed to be like, it's like, okay, I need to use him or gain his trust so that he doesn't suspect that I would do the things I'm about to do.
Or he needs to be a remotely nice person and stop saying all this dumb hypocritical shit.
Yeah.
He needs to be Kai Wolf's character from Every Time She Smiles.
Sure. Yeah. That makes sense. Where it's kind of like, hey, this is the system I'm in and I'm kind of screwed. I'll help you where I can, but there are places where I can't.
Yeah.
But yeah, thumbs down. Where do we have this one letterboxed?
Just so you know, I will never remember this movie after this point. And
I'm going to try not to mention it again.
It's because if you ever had to mention it again, I'll 100% think you're talking about Final Exam. Because the name is so stupid.
Yeah. Or Final Approach.
We watched a movie called Final Approach.
No, that was a MacGyver episode.
Oh, thank God. I was like, I know I forget a lot of what we talk about on the show, but you can't just make up names of movies we haven't seen.
We did watch Final Countdown.
I remember that one. I enjoyed that one.
Richard, what are you thinking?
I have it in 29th, which puts it below Love and Money, but above Madman.
All right.
What was the Comeback Trail? Oh, I remember now. That was the two guys. Yeah.
Cowboy movie.
Sorry. Jesus Christ.
The most recent episode that we did.
Shut up. I have this one in 31st. It is below Personal Best and above the Comeback Trail.
I have it in 30th, which is just under Night Crossing and just above Love and Money. Our director here was Paul Almond. He has directing credits on the first of Michael Apted's 7 Up series, which he co-directed, and he has credits for the reuse of that footage in 49 Up and 56 Up. Outside of those, I didn't recognize much else in his filmography. The writer here was Marc Rosen, His only other IMDb credit was for writing a short called Nicolina in 1978. Gail Thomson, story credit just this. Peter German, this was his first feature composer credit. Didn't recognize much else, but he's had sound department credits previously on the podcast for Heavy Metal and Scanners. He also has special effects credits in Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2. The cinematographer here was John Coquillon. He has previously DP'd Wuthering Heights, Straw Dogs, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, and so far on the show, The Changeling and The Amateur. The editor was Deborah Karen. She previously cut Meatballs, and so far on the show, Happy Birthday to Me. Later, she's back to cut Meatballs 3. Geneviève Bujold played Nicole Thomson. The earliest thing I think I've seen from her is a film called King of Hearts, 1966, which was recommended to me by friend of the show, Julia W.D. Harrison, and is completely adorable. Highly recommend.
Was she the ballerina?
Yeah, she was the love interest in the yellow dress,
okay.
yeah. She was also nominated for Best Actress after her turn in 1970's Anne of the Thousand Days. Later, she shows up in Earthquake, Dead Ringers. We've seen her now in Coma, Last Flight of Noah's Ark, making this her second consecutive film to begin with a synonym for ultimate, last and final. This is also her fourth of 5 collaborations with, at the time, ex-husband, director Paul Almond, after Isabel, Act of the Heart, and Journey, and Before the Dance Goes On. Michael York played Lyosha Petrov. He's a stage-trained actor. He was Lucentio in the 67 Taming of the Shrew, Tybalt in the 68 Romeo and Juliet. He's Brian Roberts in Cabaret, D'Artagnan in The Three and The Four Musketeers. In 1981, he stars in The White Lions, a third Family with Lions movie after Savage Harvest and Roar, but I haven't found a copy of it yet.
Oh, man.
To my generation, he's best known as Basil Exposition, head agent of Austin Powers' equivalent of Bond's Q branch. We've seen him now in Logan's Run. Burgess Meredith played Zack. He's Mickey in the Rocky films for 1 Oscar nomination. He was Penguin on the 60s Batman TV show for 6 Oscar nominations. No, that's not a thing. He's in Day of the Locust for another Oscar nomination. We've seen him so far in When Time Ran Out, Clash of the Titans, Burnt Offerings, and True Confessions. Later this season, he's back for Rocky III, and he also narrates the Twilight Zone movie. Colleen Dewhurst played Dr. Valentine Ulanova. She has 4 Emmys from a long television acting career, and she's also Kate in The Cowboys, Mom Hall in Annie Hall, Tracy in When a Stranger Calls, Henrietta Dodd in The Dead Zone, and Satan in Exorcist III. We saw her last in Tribute. In interviews, she has claimed that she hoped this film would never be released because of the confusing set that director Almond ran. Len Doncheff played Colonel Kozlov. We previously heard him as a barbarian in Heavy Metal. Later this season, he's back for Murder by Phone, and next season, he's Jack Hawkland in Strange Brew. Later, he voices Omega Red and Arkady Rossovich on X-Men the Animated Series, and several other Omega Red appearances. Alexandra Stewart played Samantha O'Donnell. No idea who that is. I guess the co-worker from the beginning of the film?
Must be.
We've seen her previously as Barbara Gray in Phobia, and later she's Edie in Frantic. David McElraith played Richard. He's Sam Weinberger in Happy Birthday Gemini, which will get a mini-sode eventually, and later he's Tom Stanley in Millennium. I don't know which Millennium, Richard.
the TV series or the film?
I don't know. Timothy Webber. Before this, we've seen him in Hog Wild, Terror Train, and Ticket to Heaven, 3 other Canadian classics. He also shows up in Millennium, the film, and the unrelated television show. He was Joe Banneker in MacGyver episode Deep Cover about submarine sales. More recently, he was an ape elder in War for the Planet of the Apes, and he's also Ed in 30 episodes of Peter Farrelly's Loudermilk series. Joe Granick. We saw him last for our mini-sode review of Kinji Fukasaku's Virus Day of Resurrection. Norman Tavis, these people don't have credits, just their names listed. We've seen him now in Hog Wild and Oh Heavenly Dog. Vladimir Bondarenko shows up in Virus. Neil Affleck, we've seen him now in Oh Heavenly Dog, Scanners, and My Bloody Valentine. Most of his credits are actually from working in animation on shows like Rocko's Modern Life, The Critic, King of the Hill, Rugrats, The Simpsons, Camp Lazlo, Fairly Odd Parents, The Octonauts, and The Magic School Bus Rides Again.
What does he do on those shows?
Animation department. I don't know a specific credit.
Okay.
Damir Andre, we saw him last in Happy Birthday to Me, and he's back this season for Visiting Hours. Later, he's in Dead Ringers, FX2, the RoboCop TV series, the Rollerball remake, and most recently, the first Shazam film for the DCU. Tony Angelo, we've seen him now in Oh Heavenly Dog, Atlantic City, and Gas. Elena Baranova, this is her only acting credit, but she does a lot of Russian dialect coaching. for films like The Russia House for Sean Connery, JFK, Air Force One, Iron Man 2, The Lorax, coaching DeVito to voice the Russian version of the character.
Okay.
Because he voiced it in every language.
Oh.
He just did it by ear.
She should have coached Michael York.
Yeah. She also probably could have spent a little more time on Iron Man 2, but that's fine. Speaking of people whose names rhyme with Michael York, Mickey Rourke. She also worked on A Good Day to Die Hard, Atomic Blonde, Stranger Things, and most recently Bullet Train. Walter Bolton, later he's a coroner on the Friday the 13th series. Liz Dufresne, she did voices on early 90s animated series Rupert and The Adventures of Tintin. Thomas Kovacs, we've seen him now in Hog Wild, Pick Up Summer, Scanners, and My Bloody Valentine. Katya Ladon played Inmate in Curtains. Michael Malot, or Malo, played the Signor in The Peanut Butter Solution.
Oh my God, was that the Signor?
Yeah.
Peanut Butter Solution is amazing. You guys gotta watch it.
Michael Mullally played KGB agent. He also shows up in Oh Heavenly Dog, Scanners, and Gas. Andrew Semple, we've seen him now in Death Ship and Hog Wild. Vlastra Vrana, we've seen him now in Happy Birthday to Me, Gas, Heavy Metal, and The Amateur. And he also shows up in the Friday the 13th series, Scanners 2, and Highlander 3, The Final Dimension. I think that's everything for Final Assignment. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, you can find all our socials at linktree/vintagevideopod. If you enjoy what we're doing, consider giving us a review on iTunes. I don't think it helps visibility, but it's good for morale. And if you really like the show, maybe you should join our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast for access to all our monthly 70s reviews and a hand in choosing next month's film. Patrons are currently choosing between 11 Harrow House, Big Bad Mama, Blood Spattered Bride, Coonskin, Homebodies, Juggernaut, Julia, Lady Snowblood 2, Phase 4, Scenes from a Marriage, The Swinging Cheerleaders, and The Thirsty Dead for a 50th anniversary review next month. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing Evil Under the Sun, which IMDb describes like so. Trying to find how a millionaire wound up with a phony diamond brings Hercule Poirot to an exclusive island resort frequented by the rich and famous. When a murder is committed, everyone has an alibi. I think that should say motive, not alibi. Alibi means everything's fine. None of them did it.
Well, I mean, but everyone does have an alibi.
They do all have an alibi.
They fabricate alibis, but some of them are not.
But part of the point is that they all have an alibi.
But I just feel like it's less intimidating to say, oh, everyone has a perfectly good explanation for where they were, when you should say everyone had a good reason to kill the person.
They had both.
As they typically do in these films. Anyway, we leave you now with the trailer for Evil Under the Sun.
Bon appétit, Monsieur Poirot.
Merci, Hyacinthe. Oh, I do not think that formal introductions are necessary. Poirot, Hercule Poirot. There are those who have called me the greatest detective of all time, a description with which I find it difficult to quarrel. But even a great detective must at times recharge the little grey cells. And I recently took my vacation on an Adriatic island so remote as to be unknown even to the guide Michelin.
I hope you haven't come here to practice your sleuthing games on my guests. They've all got far too many skeletons in their cupboards.
Alina is my wife. That's all there is to it.
Till death do you part? Even in those days, she could always throw her legs up in the air, higher than any of us. And wider.
Patrick, aren't you getting a little tired of rowing?
I'm so sorry. We late? Patrick insisted upon rowing me right around the island. It's much bigger than I thought, poor darling. He's absolutely exhausted.
Not in the least surprised.
She's been murdered!
What the hell do we do now, Odell?
Just leave it to me.
Do you know what I'm most sick of in this place?
What, madame?
Pity. I can't bear to be pitied.
Oh, my. I'm the last to arrive.
I'm sorry, Sir Horace, but it's my duty to put it to you that you were furious. You lost your temper. You strangled her.
That is poppycock! That is poppycock!
I wish you to consider very carefully a bathing cap, a bath, a bottle, a wristwatch, the diamond, the noonday gun, the breath of the sea, and the height of the cliff.
You just wait. Stay right. Linda, you tell her to tell him the truth.
But with Hercule Poirot, mysteries never last very long. You are skeptical? Well, perhaps you would care to pit your wits against mine. Bonne chance, mes amis.